My ex sent me a message thanking me for funding her law degree so her new wealthy boyfriend didn't have to, so I made one phone call that changed everything. Daphne and I met when we were both broke graduate students. I was finishing my engineering degree while working 3 part-time jobs. She wanted to go to law school but had maxed out her student loans. "I'll never make it without help," she said, crying in our tiny apartment. So I helped. I took out personal loans, worked overnight shifts at the warehouse, and sold my car. For 3 years, I put $47,000 toward her tuition while living on ramen and hope. She promised we'd build a life together once she graduated and landed a big firm job. The day she passed the bar exam, she moved out. "I need space to focus on my career," she explained. 2 months later, I saw her Instagram. She was dating Rodrigo, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. Designer clothes, yacht parties, Europe trips, everything I couldn't give her. I didn't contact her. I focused on finishing my degree and landing a job at a tech startup. Life moved on. Then last week, her message appeared. "Thanks for the investment in my education. Rodrigo appreciates not having to cover my student debt. You were always so generous." I stared at those words for an hour. The casual cruelty, the entitlement, the complete dismissal of what I'd sacrificed. I opened my laptop and pulled up my records. Every loan document, every payment receipt, every email where she'd promised we were building our future together. Then I called my friend Wesley, who happens to work in collections law. "Remember that ex I told you about?" I asked. "The one who drained you dry then left?" "Yeah, I need you to look at something." I sent him the documentation. 20 minutes later, he called back, laughing. "You know those personal loans you took out for her tuition? Obviously. They're not gifts. They're recoverable as fraud if you can prove she misrepresented the nature of your relationship to secure funds." My heart started racing. The emails where she promised marriage, called you her future husband, discussed joint finances, that's evidence of fraudulent inducement. You gave money based on promises she never intended to keep. "Can I really do this?" "I already drafted the demand letter," Wesley said. "She owes you $47,000 plus interest, and her fancy law firm won't risk their reputation defending her against this." I sent the letter that night. Daphne called me at 2 a.m., screaming, "You can't do this. That money was a gift." "Funny," I said calmly. "I have emails where you explicitly called it our investment in our future, a future you knew you were abandoning. Rodrigo will pay you back. Just drop this. I don't want his money. I want yours, from your salary, the one you earned with the degree I funded." She hung up. 3 days later, her lawyer called. They wanted to settle quietly. If this went public, it would damage her reputation at the firm. $47,000 plus interest, paid from her accounts, or I file publicly, I said. They agreed, but that's not what made me make a second call. While reviewing the settlement documents, I noticed something strange. The firm representing Daphne was the same firm where she worked. They were covering her legal fees. I called Wesley again. "If her firm is paying her legal defense for personal fraud, isn't that a conflict of interest?" Wesley went quiet. "Forward me everything." An hour later, he called back. "This gets better. If the firm is using company resources for her personal legal issues, that's misuse of partnership funds. And if they're doing it because she's dating a client's son, Rodrigo's father's company must be a client." Exactly. This is massive ethics violation territory. That's when I realized the phone call I'd made hadn't just changed everything for Daphne. It was about to change everything for Rodrigo's family business too. Wesley worked fast. Within 48 hours, he'd compiled a preliminary report on the connections between Daphne's firm, Montgomery and Associates, and Rodrigo's family pharmaceutical empire, Castellanos Pharmaceuticals. "Sit down for this," Wesley said when he called. "Castellanos Pharmaceuticals has been Montgomery and Associates' largest client for 7 years. They've paid the firm over $12 million in legal fees during that time. So Daphne dating Rodrigo is definitely a conflict. It's worse than that. I pulled public filings. Daphne was assigned to the Castellanos account 3 months after she started at the firm. 2 weeks later, she started dating Rodrigo. I felt my stomach turn. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying it's a hell of a coincidence. Junior associate gets assigned to the firm's biggest client, immediately starts dating the client's heir, and suddenly she's getting promoted faster than anyone in her class. I pulled up Daphne's LinkedIn. Sure enough, she'd made senior associate in just 2 years. Her colleagues from law school were still grinding away at the junior level. "There's more," Wesley continued. "The settlement offer they sent you? It's on Montgomery and Associates letterhead, billed to a general partnership expense account. That means the firm is paying your settlement. Why would they do that? Because if this goes public, it exposes their relationship with Castellanos. Think about it. If Daphne is romantically involved with a client's family member while working on that client's legal matters, every piece of advice she's given them could be compromised. Every contract she's reviewed, every deal she's negotiated, they're protecting their cash cow. Exactly. And if I'm right, they're violating about 15 different ethics rules to do it." I stared out my apartment window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Daphne was probably sitting in her expensive condo, thinking she'd gotten away with it, thinking Rodrigo's money would solve all her problems. She had no idea what was coming. "What do we do?" I asked. "We file a complaint with the State Bar Association. We document everything, and we watch the dominoes fall." The complaint took a week to prepare. Wesley was meticulous, cross-referencing every detail against the rules of professional conduct. We documented the timeline of Daphne's relationship with Rodrigo, her assignment to the Castellanos account, her rapid promotions, and the firm's decision to pay her personal legal settlement. "This is bulletproof," Wesley said as we reviewed the final draft. "The bar will have to investigate." "How long does that take?" "Could be months, could be a year, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. The firm will have to produce records, emails, billing statements. If there's anything else shady going on, they'll find it." I signed the complaint and watched Wesley file it electronically. Done. No going back. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I went to work, came home, lived my life. Part of me wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I was being vindictive, if I should have just taken the money and moved on. Then my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. "Turn on the news," Wesley said. I grabbed my remote and flipped to the local station. The anchor was mid-sentence. "Investigation into Montgomery and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms, following allegations of ethics violations and conflicts of interest involving their representation of pharmaceutical giant Castellanos Pharmaceuticals." The screen showed footage of reporters outside the firm's downtown office. The State Bar Association confirmed this evening that they've opened a formal inquiry into the firm's practices after receiving a detailed complaint from an anonymous source. Among the allegations, that a senior associate at the firm engaged in an undisclosed romantic relationship with the son of a major client while providing legal services to that client's company. My hands were shaking. The firm released a statement denying any wrongdoing and stating they are cooperating fully with the investigation. However, sources tell us that Castellanos Pharmaceuticals has already begun reviewing their relationship with Montgomery and Associates and may be considering alternative legal representation. The news cut to commercial. "Wesley," I whispered, "what did we just do? We exposed the truth. Now let's see what else they've been hiding." The media frenzy lasted 3 days. Every business publication in the city ran stories about the investigation. Legal ethics professors gave interviews about conflicts of interest. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals stock dipped 2% on concerns about their legal exposure. And Daphne went silent. No Instagram posts, no LinkedIn updates, nothing. I found out why when Wesley called me on Monday morning. "Daphne's been placed on administrative leave," he said. "The firm can't have her working on anything while the investigation is ongoing. It's in their own filing with the bar." "Is she getting paid?" "Probably, but she can't work on any cases. She's radioactive right now. No client would want an associate under investigation touching their files." I thought about Daphne sitting at home, her career suddenly on hold. All those years of law school, all that ambition, stalled because she thought she could use people and walk away clean. Because she thought she could use me and walk away clean. "What happens next?" I asked. "The bar will interview witnesses. They'll want to talk to you eventually, as the complainant. They'll subpoena the firm's records. If they find evidence of ethics violations, they can sanction individual attorneys or even the whole firm. Sanctions like what? Fines, suspensions, in extreme cases, disbarment. And if Montgomery and Associates loses Castellanos as a client over this, we're talking about a financial hit that could destroy the firm." "Good," Wesley laughed. "You know what's funny? She could have just paid you back quietly. Could have written a check for 50 grand and made this go away. But she had to be arrogant about it. Had to rub your face in her new life. Pride comes before the fall," I said. "In this case, pride comes before the complete professional and financial collapse. I'll call you when I hear more." 2 weeks later, the first shoe dropped. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals announced they were conducting an internal review of all legal work performed by Montgomery and Associates over the past 3 years. The press release was carefully worded, but the message was clear. They were looking for a reason to fire the firm. The second shoe dropped 3 days after that. The State Bar expanded their investigation. According to a leak reported by the local legal journal, investigators had found irregularities in how the firm billed Castellanos for work performed by Daphne. "They were padding her hours," Wesley explained when he forwarded me the article. "Junior associates typically bill 1,800 to 2,000 hours a year. Daphne was billing 2,600. Mathematically impossible unless she was working 18-hour days 7 days a week, which her email metadata proves she wasn't. So they were overbilling the client to justify her salary and her bonuses, and probably her promotions. It's fraud, and it's exactly the kind of thing the bar loves to sink their teeth into." I read the article twice. Near the end, there was a quote from a Montgomery and Associates spokesperson. "We are committed to maintaining the highest ethical standards and are cooperating fully with all investigations." Empty words. They were scrambling, and everyone knew it. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk, please, D." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her squirm, but I was curious to see if she'd finally understand what she'd done. I texted back, "Coffee, tomorrow, 10 a.m., that place on 5th. Thank you." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about the last time I'd seen Daphne in person, the day she moved out. She'd looked so confident, so certain about her future, so certain she didn't need me anymore. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived at 9:45 a.m. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching people hurry past on their way to work. Daphne walked in at exactly 10 a.m. She looked terrible. Her designer outfit was rumpled, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, no makeup. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. I didn't respond, just waited. "I know you filed the bar complaint," she continued. I know this whole thing is because of you. Prove it, she flinched. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to ask you to stop. Stop what? Telling the truth? Please, her voice cracked. My career is over. The firm is going to fire me as soon as the investigation concludes. Rodrigo's father is furious. His lawyers are threatening to sue Montgomery for malpractice. I'm going to be unemployable. Sounds rough. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for the text message. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was cruel, and I was wrong. I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold. Do you know what I did the night you left? I asked. She shook her head. I sat in our apartment, my apartment, and I added up all the debt I'd taken on for you, all the shifts I'd worked, all the things I'd sacrificed. And you know what I realized? What? That I'd been an idiot. That I'd given everything to someone who saw me as a stepping stone, as a temporary funding source until something better came along. That's not— Don't. I cut her off. Don't insult me by pretending it wasn't exactly that. You used me. You took my money, my time, my hope for our future, and you traded it all for a guy with a trust fund. Tears started rolling down her face. I felt nothing. I made a mistake, she whispered. I got caught up in the excitement of graduating, of getting hired at a big firm. Rodrigo paid attention to me and I felt special. I felt like I'd finally made it. And I was just the poor grad student who'd outlived his usefulness. Yes. She looked up at me, mascara smearing. Yes, and I hate myself for it. I've hated myself every day since. But this investigation, the firm collapsing, losing everything, isn't that enough? Haven't I paid enough? I leaned back in my chair. Paid enough? Daphne, you haven't even started paying. That settlement you agreed to? That's just the money. You owe me 3 years of my life. You owe me the car I sold. You owe me the career opportunities I missed because I was too busy working 3 jobs to fund your dreams. You owe me the trust I'll never be able to give anyone else because you broke something fundamental in me. I can't undo the past. No, you can't. But you can face the consequences. That's all this is. Consequences. She wiped her eyes. Will you drop the complaint? If I pay you back in full with interest, will you make this stop? I almost laughed. Daphne, I'm not the one investigating you. The state bar is. The firm's clients are. Rodrigo's father's lawyers are. I just lit the match. The building was always going to burn because it was built on lies and fraud and corruption. So there's nothing I can do? You can tell the truth. Cooperate with the investigation. Take responsibility. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll only get a suspension instead of disbarment. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I hope you're happy, she said bitterly. I hope destroying my life makes you feel better about yours. It's not about feeling better. It's about you finally understanding that actions have consequences. You can't just take and take and take from people and expect them to smile while you walk away. She left without another word. I sat there for a while, finishing my cold coffee. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt vindicated. Mostly, I just felt tired. Wesley called that afternoon. You'll never believe what just hit the news. What now? Montgomery & Associates is being sued by 3 former clients for malpractice. All 3 cases involve work that Daphne did. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals is leading the charge. That was fast. When you smell blood in the water, you strike. These companies have been looking for reasons to challenge their legal bills for years. Now they have one. And get this. One of the lawsuits alleges that Daphne leaked confidential client information to Rodrigo, who used it to make investment decisions. My stomach dropped. Did she? No idea, but the timing looks suspicious. Rodrigo made some very profitable trades in pharmaceutical stocks right before major announcements that Daphne would have known about through her work. That's insider trading. Yep, and if they can prove it, we're talking federal crimes, SEC investigations, prison time. I set down my phone and walked to my window. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. People working, loving, fighting, surviving. Daphne was out there somewhere, watching her whole world crumble, and I'd made it happen with one phone call. Over the next month, the situation spiraled completely out of control. Montgomery & Associates lost 4 major clients, representing 30% of their annual revenue. 12 associates resigned, flooding the market with their resumes. 2 partners retired early, cashing out their equity before the firm's value cratered further. The State Bar investigation expanded to include the firm's billing practices, client confidentiality procedures, and conflict of interest protocols. They were examining every case Daphne had touched, every hour she'd billed, every email she'd sent. And then the SEC got involved. The federal investigation into potential insider trading focused on 17 stock transactions Rodrigo had made over 2 years. 17 suspiciously timed trades that netted him $3.2 million in profits. Trades that coincided with confidential information Daphne would have accessed through her work. Wesley forwarded me the indictment when it was unsealed. Rodrigo Castellanos was charged with 14 counts of securities fraud. Daphne was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. They're offering her a deal, Wesley explained. If she testifies against Rodrigo and cooperates fully, they won't charge her. But she'd have to admit everything, on the record. Will she take it? She'd be insane not to. Insider trading carries serious prison time. Rodrigo's family has lawyers, but even they can't make this disappear. I thought about Daphne sitting in some prosecutor's office, realizing she had to choose between her boyfriend and her freedom, wondering how her life had gone so wrong so fast, all because she'd sent one smug text message. The news broke on a Friday afternoon. Pharmaceutical heir charged in insider trading scheme dominated every business headline. Rodrigo's arrest photo showed him in an expensive suit, looking bewildered and angry. Daphne's cooperation agreement was leaked by Monday. The legal community erupted in gossip. Junior associates whispered in courthouse hallways. Partners at rival firms sent gloating emails. Montgomery and Associates became a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition overrides ethics. I went to work, came home, lived my normal life, but I couldn't stop reading the news. Couldn't stop following every twist in the story. Wesley noticed. "You doing okay?" he asked when we met for lunch. "Yeah." "Why?" "Because you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes. This thing is eating you up." I set down my phone. "I just want to see how it ends." How it ends is that Daphne loses her law license, Rodrigo goes to prison, Montgomery and Associates probably dissolves, and Castellanos Pharmaceuticals spends the next decade repairing their reputation. You won. It's over. It doesn't feel over. Because revenge never does. It's not like the movies. There's no neat resolution where the bad guy apologizes and you feel complete. Real life is messier than that. I picked at my sandwich. Did I go too far? Wesley leaned back in his chair. You want my honest opinion? Always. She committed fraud. Against you. Against her firm's clients, against federal securities laws. You didn't make her do any of that. You just pulled back the curtain and showed everyone who she really was. If that destroyed her career, that's on her, not you. But I knew it would snowball. I knew the investigation would uncover more than just our situation. So what? You're not responsible for every crime she committed. You're just the guy who finally said enough is enough. Sometimes the right thing to do is uncomfortable. Sometimes being ethical means other people face consequences. That's not your fault. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel like I'd done the right thing. But mostly I just felt hollow. That night, I got another text from Daphne. I'm testifying tomorrow, against Rodrigo. I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Good luck. Do you hate me? I thought about that question. Did I hate her? Or did I just hate what she represented? The betrayal, the casual cruelty, the assumption that people like me were disposable. No, I just don't think about you anymore. She didn't respond. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I didn't attend, but I followed the coverage obsessively. Daphne testified for 2 full days, walking the jury through every conversation, every leaked detail, every trade Rodrigo had made based on information she'd provided. The defense tried to paint her as a scorned lover seeking revenge, but the paper trail was overwhelming. Emails, text messages, phone records, all of it pointing to a systematic scheme to profit from insider information. Rodrigo was convicted on 12 of 14 counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison and ordered him to forfeit $3.2 million in illegal profits. Daphne received immunity from criminal prosecution, but faced disbarment proceedings. The state bar's final report was damning. Fraudulent billing, conflicts of interest, breach of client confidentiality, conduct unbecoming of an attorney. She was disbarred permanently. No chance of reinstatement. Montgomery and Associates announced their dissolution 3 days after the verdict. The firm that had existed for 47 years, that had represented some of the city's most powerful companies, ceased to exist because they'd prioritized profit over ethics. I read the announcement in my apartment, sitting in the same spot where I'd read Daphne's original text message, the one that started everything. My phone rang. Wesley, it's done, he said. Everything's wrapped up. The settlement money was transferred to your account this morning. $47,000 plus $8,400 in interest. $55,400. I checked my banking app. There it was. More money than I'd had in my account since before I met Daphne. You should celebrate, Wesley continued. You won. Against all odds, against a huge law firm and a pharmaceutical dynasty, you won. I don't feel like I won. Why not? Because winning was supposed to feel better than this. Wesley was quiet for a moment. You want to know what I think? Tell me. I think you're not celebrating because deep down you never wanted revenge. You wanted justice, and justice isn't satisfying like revenge is. Justice is just right. It's the way things should be, even when it's complicated and messy and doesn't make you feel like a hero. I'm not a hero. No, you're just a guy who refused to be a victim. Who said enough when everyone else would have swallowed their pride and moved on. That's not nothing. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. About the phone call that changed everything. About Daphne's career in ruins, Rodrigo in prison, an entire law firm destroyed. About whether any of it had been worth it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Daphne. I know you don't think about me anymore, but I think about you every day. About the person I was, and the person I became. You were right about everything. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to understand that. I hope someday you can forgive me. I read the message 3 times, then I deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late, some damage is too deep to repair, and sometimes the only closure you get is knowing that justice was served, even if it doesn't make the pain go away. I transferred the settlement money into a high-yield savings account and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls from Wesley. Turn on the news, his voicemail said. You need to see this. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the local news website. The headline made my blood run cold. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals CEO arrested in connection with Sun's insider trading scheme. According to the article, federal prosecutors had expanded their investigation. While building the case against Rodrigo, they'd uncovered evidence that his father, Mateo Castellanos, had known about the illegal trading and had actively encouraged it. More than that, He'd used his position as CEO to manipulate drug approval timelines and clinical trial results to make Rodrigo's trades more profitable. The SEC and the Department of Justice were now investigating Castellanos Pharmaceuticals for securities fraud, manipulation of clinical trials, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I called Wesley immediately. Did you know about this? Not until this morning, but it makes sense. Where do you think Rodrigo learned to cut corners and break rules? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I read through the article again. Mateo Castellanos was being held without bail. Federal agents had raided Castellanos Pharmaceuticals headquarters, seizing computers and files. The company's stock had dropped 42% in pre-market trading. This is bigger than I thought, I said. It always was. You just didn't know it yet. Daphne's testimony didn't just put Rodrigo away. It gave prosecutors a window into the whole operation. And once they started looking, they found a whole lot more than insider trading. Over the next week, the full scope of the Castellanos family's corruption came to light. Mateo had been manipulating FDA approval processes through bribery and political connections. He'd falsified clinical trial data to get medications approved faster. He'd suppressed evidence of dangerous side effects that had led to patient deaths. The Department of Justice brought RICO charges, racketeering influenced corrupt organization, the kind of charge usually reserved for organized crime families. Because that's what Castellanos Pharmaceuticals was, a family business built on corruption, fraud, and a complete disregard for human life. Daphne's cooperation had opened a door, and federal prosecutors had walked through it into a nightmare of regulatory violations and corporate crime. The fallout was staggering. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals filed for bankruptcy. 15 executives were indicted. 3 FDA officials resigned amid corruption investigations. Class action lawsuits were filed by families of patients who died from drugs that should never have been approved. And I'd started it all because my ex-girlfriend sent a smug text message. I met Wesley for coffee 3 weeks after Mateo's arrest. You look terrible, he said when I sat down. I can't sleep. Every night I think about those patients who died, those families who lost people because of drugs that Castellanos pushed through. If I hadn't filed that complaint, would any of this have come out? Wesley stirred his coffee slowly. Maybe, maybe not. But here's what I know. You didn't create the corruption. You didn't bribe FDA officials or falsify clinical trials. You didn't do anything except stand up for yourself when someone wronged you. The fact that standing up for yourself exposed a massive criminal enterprise, that's not your fault. People died, Wesley. People died because Mateo Castellanos valued profit over human life. Because he built a company on fraud and corruption. You didn't kill those people, he did. And now he's facing justice for it. But if I'd just let it go, then he'd still be out there, falsifying data, bribing officials, killing people for money. Is that better? Is letting criminals operate in the shadows because you feel guilty about exposing them really the moral high ground you want to stand on? I didn't have an answer. Listen, Wesley continued, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen a lot of bad people get away with a lot of bad things because good people decided it wasn't worth the fight, because they didn't want to make waves, because they were afraid of the consequences. You made waves. You fought. And yeah, the consequences were bigger than anyone expected. But that doesn't make you responsible for other people's crimes. I just wanted my money back, and you got it. Everything else? That's just the universe balancing the scales. Sometimes when you shine a light on one cockroach, you discover the whole kitchen is infested. That's not your fault. That's just truth coming to light. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel like I'd done the right thing. But the weight of it all, the destroyed careers, the prison sentences, the patients who died years ago because of drugs that should never have been approved, it was crushing me. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through my old emails with Daphne. The ones from when we were happy, when we were planning our future together. Reading them hurt worse than I expected. There was the email where she thanked me for believing in her when nobody else did. The one where she promised we'd travel the world together once she made partner. The one where she said I was the best thing that ever happened to her. Had she meant any of it? Or was I always just a convenient funding source? I'd never know. And maybe that was the hardest part. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this the man who filed the complaint against Montgomery and Associates? A woman's voice, shaking slightly. Who is this? My name is Claudia Martinez. My husband died 3 years ago from a drug manufactured by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals, a drug that never should have been approved. I wanted to thank you. I sat down hard. Thank me? For exposing them. For starting the investigation that showed what they really were. My husband trusted that medication because the FDA approved it. He trusted the system, and it killed him because someone manipulated that system for profit. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you didn't do it for us. I know you were just trying to get your money back from your ex-girlfriend. But what you did, it's going to help so many families get justice. The class action lawsuit, the criminal charges, none of that happens without your complaint starting this whole chain of events. I didn't know what to say. Thank you, she continued, her voice breaking. Thank you for not letting them get away with it. Thank you for being brave enough to fight back, even when you didn't know what it would uncover. My husband's death finally means something now. Finally, someone's being held accountable. We talked for 20 more minutes. She told me about her husband, about the medication that was supposed to help his heart condition but instead caused the stroke that killed him, about the 3 kids he left behind, about the years she'd spent trying to get answers, only to be dismissed by Castellanos' lawyers. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Maybe Wesley was right. Maybe I wasn't responsible for other people's crimes. Maybe all I'd done was pull on one thread, and the whole rotten tapestry had unraveled because it was built on lies. Over the next month, I heard from 7 more families. People who'd lost loved ones to Castellanos Pharmaceuticals' fraudulent drugs. People who'd been following the investigation, who'd tracked down my name through court records and news articles. They all said the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for exposing the truth. Thank you for not letting them hide behind their money and power. Thank you for being the domino that started the chain reaction that brought them down. I started a file. Photos they sent me of their lost family members. Letters detailing what had happened. Stories of pain and loss and justice delayed. And slowly, the guilt started to transform into something else. Not quite pride. I'd never be proud of destroying someone's career, even if that someone was Daphne. But maybe acceptance. Understanding that sometimes doing the right thing has consequences you can't predict. That sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for people you've never met. 6 months after my initial phone call to Wesley, I attended a town hall meeting organized by the families affected by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals fraud. Over 200 people packed into a community center. Parents who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, spouses, siblings, friends, all united by grief and the desire for justice. A woman named Teresa stood at the podium, reading the names of 63 people who died because of falsified clinical trials. 63 lives cut short because someone decided profit mattered more than safety. When she finished, the room was silent, except for quiet crying. Then she looked directly at me. Several people had recognized me, and word had spread that I was there. I want to thank the person who started all of this, Teresa said. The person who refused to be a victim, who said enough when it would have been easier to stay quiet. This investigation, these charges, this justice, it started with one person standing up for themselves, and that courage rippled out to help all of us. The room erupted in applause. I sat frozen in my seat, tears streaming down my face. I hadn't meant to become a hero. I just wanted my money back. I just wanted Daphne to understand that she couldn't use people and walk away without consequences. But sometimes justice works in mysterious ways. Sometimes one person's refusal to be silenced echoes louder than anyone expects. After the meeting, dozens of people came up to shake my hand, to hug me, to thank me. I listened to their stories, looked at photos of their loved ones, shared in their grief and their hope for accountability. An elderly man gripped my hand with surprising strength. My granddaughter was 8 years old, he said. The medication was supposed to help with her seizures. Instead, it caused brain hemorrhage. She died 3 days before her 9th birthday. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud. What you did, standing up to power, refusing to let them win. That's what heroes do. You saved lives by stopping them. All the people who won't die now, because Castellanos Pharmaceuticals can't push through dangerous drugs anymore. That's your legacy. I'd never thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on the destruction, on the careers ended and the prison sentences handed down, that I hadn't considered the lives saved, the medications that wouldn't be falsely approved, the clinical trials that would be honest, the FDA officials who'd think twice before accepting bribes, the pharmaceutical executives who'd remember what happened to the Castellanos family and choose ethics over profit. Driving home that night, I finally felt something like peace. I'd made that first phone call to Wesley in anger, in pain, in a desperate need for validation that I wasn't just someone to be used and discarded. And yes, it had destroyed Daphne's career. It had sent Rodrigo to prison. It had brought down an entire pharmaceutical empire. But it had also exposed corruption that had killed dozens and endangered thousands. It had started an investigation that would prevent future deaths. It had shown that power and money couldn't protect you if someone was brave enough to shine a light on your crimes. I'd never wanted to be a whistleblower. I'd never intended to take down a Fortune 500 company. I just wanted my $47,000 back. But life had other plans. A year after that first phone call, I received a letter in the mail. Official letterhead from the Department of Justice. Inside was a check for $125,000. The letter explained that under the False Claims Act, I was entitled to a percentage of the recovered funds from the Castellanos Pharmaceutical settlement. The federal government had recovered over $400 million in fines, penalties, and restitution. My share, as the person whose complaint initiated the investigation, was this check. I stared at it in disbelief. All I'd wanted was my $47,000. Now I had nearly 3 times that amount, plus the original settlement from Daphne. Wesley called me that afternoon. Did you get it? Yeah. I don't know what to do with it. I have a suggestion. There's a foundation being set up by the families affected by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals. They're working on drug safety advocacy, supporting families who lost loved ones to pharmaceutical fraud, funding research into better FDA oversight. They could use a major donor. I didn't hesitate. Set it up. All of it. Every penny from the DOJ settlement. I want it to go there. You sure? That's a lot of money. I'm sure. This money came from pain and loss and corruption. The only way it means anything is if it goes toward preventing that from happening to other families. 3 days later, I wrote the check. $125,000 to the Castellanos Pharmaceutical Victims Foundation. At the donation ceremony, I met more families, heard more stories, saw photos of children, parents, grandparents, all gone because someone prioritized profit over safety. And I understood finally why all of this had happened. Not for revenge, not for money, but because sometimes the universe pushes you to do something larger than yourself. Sometimes your personal pain becomes the catalyst for broader justice. I kept the original $47,000 settlement from Daphne. That was mine. That was the debt she owed me. The concrete acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong. But the rest? The rest belonged to something bigger. 2 years after that first phone call, I sat in a coffee shop, not the one where I'd met Daphne for the last time, somewhere new, and read the newspaper. Mateo Castellanos had been sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. Rodrigo was serving his 6-year sentence. Daphne had moved to another state, working as a paralegal under her maiden name, her law career permanently over. Montgomery and Associates was gone, dissolved completely. Several of its former partners had been disbarred. Others had retired in disgrace. The FDA had implemented new oversight procedures to prevent the kind of bribery and manipulation that Castellanos had engaged in. 3 new patient safety laws had been passed. Pharmaceutical companies faced stricter penalties for clinical trial fraud. And all of it traced back to one phone call, one decision to fight back instead of accepting being used. My phone buzzed. A text from Wesley. Coffee next week? I have something to run by you. Sure. What's up? A potential case. Woman got scammed by her business partner, wondering if you'd be willing to consult. You've got a talent for spotting fraud and corruption. I smiled. Maybe this was my purpose now. Not engineering, not the tech startup job I'd been working for the past 2 years, but this, helping people who'd been used, manipulated, taken advantage of, helping them fight back, helping them find justice. Send me the details, I texted back. Because here's what I'd learned. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And sometimes when you stand up for yourself, you end up standing up for people you've never met. You end up being the catalyst for change you never intended to create. Daphne had thought she could use me and walk away clean.